Good afternoon, 366 Weird Movie listeners. This is Giles Edwards, and I am seated nearby Stephen Kostanski, whose film, Frankie Freako, had its debut yesterday evening in the big theater here. So, hello, Stephen, and thanks for chatting with me.
Hello.
Now, obviously, there's the excitement of Fantasia, which we can get to in a little bit, but I wanted to start with a kind of trivia question and see if that might kick open some further discussion. There's a lot going on in your movie, very visual movie, and a wonderful segment with miniatures. Now, when I was observing the small world city that you created, I would swear I saw H.O. gauge train track. Is that a correct guess?
If what you're referring to is like train track for miniatures,
Yeah.
infantry, yes.
About that with train cars?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I went to a local model shop, bought a bunch of train track. Yeah, and like used that as my baseline. Some of it I like fabricated from scratch. It was kind of like the ramp, the launch. I had to fabricate sort of like the actual platform for that. But that track was like the baseline for a lot of what those minecarts were whipping around on.
Okay, excellent. And what is referring to with minecarts whipping around on is the climate. Well, one of the two climactic sequences in Frankie Freako, the Freako world. And I was wondering if you might discuss that briefly, because this is a sort of love letter movie. This is a bit of a throwback movie. I could tell even from the film frame chosen that there was a very particular era you were going for here. This dystopian vision in miniature, though, with the evil Freako Munch. I'd actually like to start talking about him and then go to the main characters first. Where does this Freako Doom come from? Because that is, I'd say, your addition to this phenomenon. Yeah, one of your additions to the phenomenon of this early 80s world that you've made.
Where does Munch himself, what are the origins?
Well, character-wise, and like a little bit of that backstory, because as much it's only maybe a quarter to a third of the movie is in this Freako world, but it is instrumental for the rest of the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of shifting gears every act in a movie, and like making things, like trying to escalate the plot as much as possible. And I knew that with this movie, starting in a house and presenting it as like, oh, it's just going to be a guy fighting little monsters in a house the whole time. Like, I knew that even I would get sick of that. I'm realizing now, like, as I'm thinking it through, structurally, part of the inspiration for that was is it 97? I can't remember, the Spawn movie, where they go to hell. And it's like a whole epic set piece, and then they come back from hell and they're in the house. They think they're safe, but they're not actually safe. The Violator actually follows them back out of hell. I'm realizing that's the same structure as going to Freak World, escaping Freak World, but then President Munch pursues them out of Freak World. So shout out to Spawn.
Yeah, shout out. Yeah, that movie gets few shout outs. I remember I've seen that. I saw it not in theaters, but on VHS, which I think is one of the last films appropriate for that.
Yeah, probably experience. Smoothed out some of those hell effects watching it on CRT TV.
Yeah, because that was a reach exceeding grasp.
Yes.
Scenario, which I always prefer since.
Well, yeah, and I can't judge because every movie I make is me reaching a little too high, flying a little too close to the sun. Because why not be ambitious? What's the point if you're not going as hard as you can?
Exactly. And I understand from reading your background, and I'll make a little comment to you now, that I walked into this film not really knowing what at all to expect, other than that it's a very eye-catching title and very Fantasia appropriate title, and knowing pretty much nothing about your filmmaking career. So poking around at that, I understand you received much of your experience that is began in makeup and other
Like
production.
prosthetic effects was like my first like paid work in the film industry. I really started in stop motion, doing animation as a kid. I had like an old Super 8 camera that I did a bunch of animations on in junior high and high school, and then transitioned into shooting live action. And while I was doing that, I got into makeup effects, doing prosthetics. I took the Dick Smith correspondence course. Dick Smith is a prosthetics artist, maybe the greatest of all time. Did The Exorcist, Godfather, and he had a course where you could correspond with him and talk about prosthetics. So out of high school I did that while working on productions in my hometown, Winnipeg. And once that took off, my kind of filmmaking career also took off parallel to that. I made my movie Manbog, which is very homemade sci-fi action movie, where I basically took everything I learned from that Dick Smith course and all my stop motion skills of compositing and things, just kind of mashed it all into one project, and have been making effects heavy movies since.
Oh, that's wonderful, and I can see that this Frankie Freako is a practiced hand behind that. Is the wonderful opening shot when we first see Freako City and the introduction of the evil, the actually evil character
yes, the
behind
real
it.
villain. Another trope of my movies that I love is setting up a character as a villain, or at least setting up an antagonistic dynamic between two characters who then become best friends to overcome a worse evil later in the movie. It's I like to call it the Blade 2 logic.
Oh, okay.
Blade teaming up with vampires to fight worse vampires.
Blade 2 is that's a fantastic thing. Well, now that we've had a little chat about some particulars, I wonder if you might give just a very brief spiel about the movie itself, so that because it is coming out more broadly. It had its first screening last night, so that our listeners can have, shall we say, a better grip of what we've been talking about since we got a little deeply. So if you want to talk a little bit about Connor and Frankie and that vision of yours that was on the screen last night.
Yeah, I mean, the basic premise is this nerdy guy named Connor is feeling a little down about his life, and he manages to catch a late night ad for a hotline that basically promises a cool party time. And so he calls it thinking that it's going to make him cool to his wife and coworkers, and instead he unleashes hell and essentially opens a portal to another dimension where little goblin shitheads show up and terrorize him in his house. And it continues to escalate throughout the film. He tries to fight them, get them out of the house, and clean up before his wife gets back from her work trip. And a lot of crazy shit happens, especially in the last 20 or so minutes.
Indeed it does, because I remember the first act, you lay the groundwork, we meet Connor, the square, even though, I think he should just embrace that, but he can't, and I understand that. Not many people can, ride that hard, and he's got one of those scenarios with the mysteriously smoking hot wife for this obvious doofus, although she has her own particular eccentricities that are revealed usually later.
Yeah, being an artist and a gun nut.
Really?
Well, I think she went to gun college.
So, and of course, sketchy boss with adding another layer of problem, but also assistance, because it's nice eventually when everyone convenes in the house for their various purposes. So with Connor, and more broadly, there is a focus that you maintain that I was incredibly impressed with. There's a tone that's set off in the first minute or two when Connor is at the office and flirts with freaking out just a little bit, but can't do it. And there's this is a slightly inaccurate phrase, but the only one coming to mind right now. There's this B-movie gosh kind of thing that Connor certainly maintains throughout the entire movie, but there's this whole sort of impish but largely innocent tone, which I was very pleased with, never let up. Now, where, like a couple titles maybe, or a couple influences of where you drew that very particular kind of, earnestness from, and how did you manage to keep it at the same level? Because it's like a straight line of tone that is very hard to do over the course of a narrative.
I mean, it's pretty normal for my movies now to just embrace whatever the absurd thing is and not be winky. That's something that's a note I give all my actors, is don't play it like this is funny or weird or anything. Play it totally straight. You are in this universe dealing with these problems. This is immediate and real, and you're not having a laugh. This is treated as seriously as you can, and the humor comes out of that seriousness. And I mean, that's a benefit of working with Connor Sweeney, Adam Brooks, Matt Kennedy, who voices Frankie. They're all guys that I've been working with for a very long time now. They've been in all my movies in some form or another. And they get how to sell the comedy of things like this. You sell it by playing it straight. It's the classic Leslie Nielsen logic, a movie like Naked Gun.
I think everything he was in, he was.
Yeah. Well, specifically his early stuff, I feel like his later straight-to-video era, it got a little and a lot winky. But specifically Airplane, to me, is such a perfect representation of how to sell absurd humor, and you sell it by treating it like everything's dead serious, and this is a life or death situation. And so, to reference the basement scene in Frankie Freako, I wanted to sell the tension of that, it's a whole Home Alone booby trap scenario that these guys are caught in, and I wanted to treat it like it's life or death. There was a shotgun pointed at Connor's
There were various guns.
Multiple guns pointed at him, and that's funny, but it's only funny if the seriousness of it is apparent. So it's always about selling the legitimacy of a scenario, even if it's the stupidest scenario imaginable.
Well, it's credit to your actors and yourself for keeping that line taut, much like the lines of string that are kept taut in the basement.
Yes. There you go.
Basement little sequence there. Now, the trio of lovable scamps, all three, Frankie is obviously leader of them. If you might talk about them and their sources, because I know of and have seen a number of things, but there is a younger generation of film fans and filmmakers who, may not have the depth of education of that era that people, I'd say, roughly around our generation did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling a lot from my childhood, as always, things that were, very influential, and media that I loved was always kind of not just a cartoon or a movie. It was also toys, comics, video games, and so the way that the characters in these franchises, the Masters of the Universe, Transformers, Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, all that stuff, Star Wars, it all needed to translate to different forms. So the designs of characters needed to have an iconography that held up in any medium. And so I always try to think in those terms. When I'm designing creatures, is will this look good as an action figure? Will this look good on a t-shirt? And I'm not thinking about that purely in monetary terms. It's really just as much as I love movies and making movies, I love the world around movies, or at least the world that used to exist around movies, which that was the stuff that gave those things longevity. I find, especially in movie culture now, it's I feel the life cycle of a lot of genre cinema is short because no, they don't bleed out into other things.
Yeah.
So when I'm designing creatures, I'm thinking like, yeah, after people see the movie, they're going to be like, well, maybe I want to go find that comic book or those toys or something. You know, so when I was designing Frankie and Dottie and Boink and the FKs, and Monto's like trying to imagine the playset that they'd fit into. I was trying to imagine the toy commercial, the side scroller, 16-bit.
And even the little handheld thing that had the LCD calculator style graphics as well.
Yes, yeah, were the Tiger Electronics games.
Oh, gosh,
yeah, like trying to think in those terms helped, like always framing things in those terms helped inform the designs of the creature. So I kept the color schemes very bold and simple. It's like the RGB color scheme for Frankie, Dottie, and Boink. And like giving them each like a gimmick, because thinking back to like the toys of my childhood, there was always some kind of gimmick. It was never just the characters, always like Aqua something.
They had their accessories.
Yeah, but not just accessories. It was also like, well, but this is the Batman that goes to space, so he's got a space helmet. You know, like there was always an extra element. So I tried to preload those into characters. So it's like, yeah, like Dottie with her 6-shooter.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, the cowboy version of a Freako. We've got the kind of cyborg mechanic version of a Freako. We've got the cool party guy version of a Freako. Everybody's got like their like shtick.
Yeah. Well, you are a busy man, and I know a lot of people are coming here to talk to you today. So I want to quickly wrap up with 2 questions. One, I guess, about the immediate future release of this, because this is fresh. Is that after Fantasia? Does it have a trajectory?
I believe it's going to other festivals, and the hope is maybe like limited theatrical. I don't know. There's like conversations happening. Obviously, I want to get it in front of as many people as possible. It being a Shout Factory production, it's guaranteed we will have Blu-ray.
And a good one at that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I want to partner with them, because I know they value physical media, which I love, and I think is an important component. This is the kind of movie people need to be able to like hold it.
And have a bright, bold cover on it.
Yes, and I can confirm that it does have exactly that. So having already approved the artwork, I can confirm that it has that.
That's great. My last question, very quickly, you mentioned your hometown, Winnipeg.
Yes.
We like to close up every 366 interview with finding out the filmmaker's hometown. So that's Winnipeg. Can you recommend a restaurant there?
I mean, the problem is the landscape there shifts so much in terms of the restaurants. It's hard to pinpoint a specific one to recommend. I guess there's a Chinese restaurant close to my parents' house that I love, China Garden. I think it's become primarily takeout post-pandemic, but I mean, I've been eating there for decades. It's just a staple of,
Testament to staying power, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you kindly, Stephen. It was a delight to chat with you.
Great chatting with you too.
Briefly. I wish you luck with festivals, theaters. And this
Thank
is
you.
Giles signing off.